Good girl. All right. Can you see Holly? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't know. I can't see the bottom of the screen. Okay, all right. Go play. All right. Welcome to HortTube. My name is Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I do on Sundays. You can ask gardening questions down below and I'll pick from those each week. I am doing some traveling in and out these days, and so some of these Sundays I might miss. But regardless, just leave your questions down below and I'll pick from those the next time I do a question and answer video. I expect to do one next Sunday, but who knows? I had a pretty epic trip out here over the last 11 days and went to see Ted Stevens down in Augusta, Georgia. A lot of you may not know who he is, but you will soon. He has about a 50-year history in woody ornamentals, and virtually, I mean, for my whole time in this business, every single time a woody shrub comes up that's been around for a while, he either named it, is involved in it, or has some knowledge of it. Just an amazing resource in this industry. And then went over to Cheekwood Gardens in Nashville, and I have a video coming from Cheekwood that maybe a couple weeks before you see some of these, but Cheekwood's going to be a fantastic video. Headed up to see Aaron, the impatient gardener. You guys have probably seen that question and answer video at this point, and I have a tour video that I'll get edited and up sometime this week. I did a tour of her garden. Not extremely thorough, but just more a general, what she's thinking in each of the areas in her landscape. I've shot a video for her channel as well, so I'm guessing that'll be up when she gets around to editing them, same as me. And then down to the Chicago Botanic Garden, interviewed Richard Hawkey, who is the trial coordinator and has a much bigger title than that at Chicago Botanic Garden. You guys will meet him. He's fantastic, and the Chicago Botanic Garden kind of sets the standard for trialing plants, and most gardens, public gardens and other gardens around the country who are involved in trialing, use their how they do it. Their perennials, when they're evaluating a perennial, it's in the ground for 4 years, and so it's going to see a real Chicago winter during that 4 years. And their shrubs up to 6 years, trees even longer. So when they're evaluating something, they're really evaluating it. So their information is usually very, very thorough. So that's interesting. You'll learn about that. And then went over to the Morton Arboretum there west of Chicago and downtown Chicago, and interviewed Kim Shearer. I think that video will end up in 2 parts. It's all about tree breeding. She is unbelievable. I met her 3 or 4 years ago here in Raleigh. And waited through COVID patiently to get up there to get her on camera, and she's just amazing. And you guys hopefully will learn a lot. Some of you will be interested in it, and some of you may not. I understand that when I'm putting up things about breeding plants, tree breeding, interesting people in this business that do different things in this business. I realize. Not everybody. It's not for everybody, but I think that you will just absolutely love her, regardless of what you think about tree breeding. So I'm excited about all of those. Plus, I shot a video with a guy who, and I may have already said this in the last question and answer, a bonsai video with just an incredible collection of bonsais. That video, I have to wait a little while because there's a magazine article that I have to wait for it to come out for that video to go up. But and still have 2 videos from Rams. So there's how many videos I have right now that need to be edited and go up, and more coming. Okay, let's see. One other thing is, maybe you guys don't always look down below the videos, but I usually, I do list down below consultations. I do 50-minute consultations. I have a lot of time blocked between like August 15th and I think for about 3 weeks there, where I haven't blocked off any time. If you guys want consultations for late summer, if you're planning on doing a project in the fall, kind of doesn't matter where you live in the country. Generally, I can help. I can answer some questions, get you past the starting block of a project, or help you with some issues you may be having, how to prune something, how to move something, whatever you need. But there are consultations available, and there's about a 3-week window there toward the end of summer there, where if you're doing a fall project, you can book a consultation with me. Okay, I generally don't advertise myself, so that was That was Jim advertising himself. Okay, so I've got, these are questions from the question and answer video from 2 weeks ago. So somebody asked me they're down in zone, I think it was 8B or 9, and their petunias are burning out already, which is not necessarily unexpected here in the South. Wanted to know what they could plant kind of for a second round of flowers. I have a lot of things where I know that kind of only last the first half of the annual season here in Raleigh. One of those things being the taller growing zinnias, and I underplant those with lantana for that reason. But you still have time to do zinnias. You probably still have time to do some sunflowers. You still have time to do, you know, any annual that you wanted to put in, and you might be able to find a reasonable price on a lot of them right now. Especially if you're down in 8B, here you're only the 1st of August, you could have these things blooming right through November. So really any annual that's available at retail, and it should be a better deal here in the middle of summer. All I wrote down was talk about Deep South. Why in the world did I write talk about the Deep South? What in the world did that even mean? Oh, I know what it means. I know what it means. Last week, I talked about planting things in the deeper South, and you know, like Houston, and putting some plants that are labeled sun into part shade. There were a lot of good comments down below. Also, a couple of questions from this past week on videos, like on Tony Avent's video, where a few of the plants in the video, people were asking how, you know, they get serious problems on those particular plants down in zone 9 in Florida or whatever. If you know that a plant you're putting in is going to just get, you know, destroyed by something already, I'm probably just not going to plant that plant. I mean, the only point would be to then break out a chemical and spray it, or have to pull the grasshoppers off, or whatever the heck it is that's eating them. And so for me, if you know the plant is problematic in your area, avoid it. There's too many good plants, especially if you're in zone 9B. Heck, you know, you can, there are a ton of things in Florida 9B, South Texas 9B, maybe less, but you know, where you get rain over in Florida, there's so many good plants available. I wouldn't pick something that you just, I know you may love it. That aside, I go for things that, you know, are not problematic right out of the gate. That's just, you know, just a thought. And if something is getting a problem over and over and over again, I always say, tear it out. Holly's parked right down below me, and you guys can't see it, but she's laying right here at my feet. Okay, so I also talked about poison ivy in last week's video, and there were a lot of great comments down below the video. Frequently, I get a gardening question, and I can't remember every single thing I should have said in the answer. It's not the answer's wrong, it's just that I always leave out some little detail. I mean, because you know, I have 20-some questions here. I'm not going to remember everything as it relates to that question, and lots of people have great follow-up information. So if you watch this video, you know, while you're watching it or listening to me, you can read comments that people have written as well, because a lot of times they give great little extras. Okay, so the poison ivy stuff, there were a lot of great comments down below the video if you want to go back and look at those comments. Just throwing that out there, that people do add commentary, and then a lot of times I'll see the comment and I'll go, well, yeah, I should have said that. Well, of course I should have said that, but you know, I didn't say it at that moment that I was reading it off my, you know, piece of paper. So that's helpful for those of you who you know, add those comments. Okay. So this is a follow-up to that video that I did at Jim and Lynn Swanson's house in Raleigh. That I put up I think I called that video one of my favorite garden tours. That went up this past week. If you haven't seen that garden, I'm going to go back up there and do other videos in that garden, Japanese maple videos, and several other things I want to do in that video. And one of the questions, comments, you know, was about other people agreeing that leaving your leaves down in problematic places. You know, if you have a sloped dry space like that, don't rake your leaves out of it. Let them lie there, add additional mulch to it, really throw on some organic material and improve that soil. It'll go a long way to helping you grow in what are difficult dry shade conditions. In a slope with the tree roots, with the established trees, amend that soil, and you don't have to buy the stuff in. Or you know, you can do it with Again, wood chips, mulch, or leave your leaves in place for sure. At a minimum, leave your leaves in place because they will help. And you do have to baby plants along. That was another part about that comment. And I've said this many times. If you're putting a plant in a dry shade condition, even if it's something that will compete and is super, super drought tolerant, it's going to take an extra year probably to establish that plant. Where other things I can plant out here, you know, in this flatter space away from the trees, and literally put them in the ground and water them once and not really have to worry about them again here in Raleigh. Something back there on this back line where I have trees behind the lot, that stuff, you know, 2 years in the ground is still wilting occasionally. So keep that in mind. You will have to baby them longer. Somebody asked about, I always talk about using wood chips. They wanted to know if pine wood chips were fine. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times there's a lot of concern around pine because the perception is it's going to lower the pH in your soil. Like pine straw has an extremely low pH when it's on the tree, but by the time it composts, everything composts back toward neutral. So even if something you start off in the compost at 4, by the time it's finished composting, it's going to be close to neutral. So keep that in mind. Most everything composts back toward neutral. So pine, if pine is the wood chips you can get, no problem, use them. Do wait though. You know, a lot of the information on wood chips, you know, doesn't include the fact that you really should wait some period of time, 6 months, 9 months before you start really planting in them. It's not always the case, not every plant. You know, a lot of plants could just be planted right into it probably and wouldn't even miss a beat. But some things can be off-colored and yellowed and would not like being planted in 6 inches of, you know, uncomposted wood chips. So aging them some is, generally speaking, a good idea. But they are in great addition to the garden. I've got them, these paths, and I don't know if you can see the path right here beside me. These are all wood chips. This stuff breaks down, it'll go in the beds. New wood chips will go down. There's wood chips in between my vegetables. They're not up against my vegetables, but they're in the rows between the vegetables to hold the weeds down. And then they break down and they become the compost for each round of vegetables. So love wood chips. Pine wood chips are just fine. Somebody asked about, can I do a consultation for Southern California? Yeah, absolutely. Sign up for a consultation. I feel like I can help you. Don't be disappointed when I tell you your garden probably shouldn't look like my Raleigh garden in Southern California. You know, I will be honest with you about the plants that you should be growing in your Southern California garden, which can be beautiful. There's no reason it can't be beautiful and be more and have a positive impact on the environment and not a negative impact on the environment out west. Let's see, problems on leaves. I'm probably, somebody made a comment on the tour video from last week, and it was just about, I don't show enough of the problems. They didn't say I should show more problems. They just said, it appears like you don't have problems. I have plenty of problems out here in this landscape. I probably have less than a lot of people. And again, this is not a brag. It's more, I've done a lot of work to the soil, and I have a lot of species, a lot of different varieties of plants. And the more varieties of plants you have, the less of a monoculture you have, the less problems you're overall going to have. If you line up 50 of the same thing, you're more likely to have problems than if you vary so many things in here. You know, I feel like I'm hosting the good guys and the bad guys. But there's plenty of things out here chewed. There's spotting on leaves. There's lots of things. And I said in Aaron's, you guys will see when Aaron's video goes up, I did say something that I should say in these videos to you guys is, if there's not something chewing on the plants in your garden, then your garden is not part of the ecosystem. Okay? So, you know, your garden is part of the real world. And in the real world, things chew on them. And so, you know, this is something I had read somewhere else. I'm not taking credit for that statement, but that's true. If there's not something in your garden eating it, then your garden is not part of the ecosystem. Now, those things run amok can obviously destroy, you know, hard work and that kind of thing. But a chewed leaf here and a chewed leaf there, I'll show more of that, just so you guys can see it. But I don't care. In fact, there are certain things out here I kind of enjoy watching. There's aphids on that grapevine back here on the building. And there's ants back there studiously maintaining them. A lot of people think that ants are eating the aphids. They're not. They're actually raising the aphids so that they can get the honeydew, the sweet aphid poo or aphid waste is sweet, and the ants actually farm the aphids, which is actually kind of cool to me. But I just don't care. The plant's perfectly healthy back there. It's just got a few aphids on it. I don't care. Okay. Somebody made a comment that sometimes people call, the beginning of July the middle of summer, when, in fact, the first day of summer was just June 21st. But technically, if you think about it, the longest day is the first day of summer. So we call it the longest day of the year is June 21st. So the days are getting shorter. So certainly the backs, by the time you get to the first 45 days of summer from June 21st until August, whatever that is, 5th or whatever, are going to be pretty tough. But the last 45 days of summer typically are shorter days, much less stress on plants. Even if the temperatures are staying up, the fact that you have shorter days are much better. But I would love to align the seasons more with the longest day being in the center of summer and the shortest day being in the middle of winter. But that's not the way it is. But I mean, typically by mid to late August, there are a lot less stresses on your plants, even if the temperatures are still elevated, just because, again, the days are shorter. Somebody wanted an update on the Juliet Clara that's over there. It's growing fantastic. That thing is awesome. I'll put up a little piece of B-roll over it as you just watched that. But that thing is finally starting to grow. Variegated plants grow slower than their green counterparts typically. And so that plant took probably an extra 6 to 8 months before it got to jumping, and now it's jumping. It's the height of the fence over there now. Okay, somebody wanted to know about moving blue rug junipers. They've got a big established wide blue rug junipers, wanted to know if they could move them. Yes, you can move them. What I would probably do sooner than later is cut them back. Try to find the center of each plant and cut them way back, and then move them in the fall. That's probably would be my approach, is kind of prep them to move them. But here's the thing. There's nothing that I dislike working with more than junipers. They just tear my skin up. They make me so itchy. The wrong time of year, which is typically late winter, early spring, they actually, they have pollen that can honestly kind of really knock you out if you're in them at the wrong time of year. Not all junipers are that way, but most are. And so I just don't like working with them. They're not patented. They're not in a fancy pot. They don't have a fancy tag. And so they're not expensive, and they're usually available in 1 gallon containers. And so for me, I'm going to go and weigh buying one for $8 to $10 versus cutting one back and moving it. I'm probably going to spend the money on that one, just because of the amount of work and how physically demanding it'll be, and the fact that those things will just tear you up working with them. So I'm probably just going to plant new ones if I wanted to continue to have them somewhere else. I won't often say that. Normally I will move something in a heartbeat, but I think a big, giant ground cover juniper that's run all over the place is going to end up being a lot of work. Okay, to move. Let's see. Somebody got an almost unrooted or barely rooted butterfly bush in the mail, where they flipped the pot over and all the soil fell off of it. There's probably been a lot of that over the last year because, there were so many new gardeners from COVID that, guys and gals can sell plants, as soon as they have any kind of top on them at all without having them fully rooted in the pot, because there's somebody waiting to buy it. It's kind of hard to blame them, but it should at least hold the soil together, even if it's lightly rooted. If I receive a plant like that and it's not broken in any other way, I will probably put it in a container or leave it in the container that it's in, let it get a little bit more established in that container, and then plant it. I probably won't complain to the company too much about that one, as long as it's got a healthy top on it, within reason. As long as it can hold itself up in the container. I get other questions about mail order plants, things broken off, and if something got broken in transit and it's going to take a year or two for it to come back, that's something you need to get your, the mail order company to help you with. But again, if it's something that's where it's lightly rooted, or, one little branch, broke but there's 10 other good branches on it, even on a small plant, those are things I'm not going to worry about. And I just acknowledge that mail ordering plants is not always going to go perfect, even with the most well-intentioned mail order company. It's just not always going to go perfect. And so, but again, a lightly rooted plant, I'm probably not going to do. I probably would just root it out for a couple weeks, because butterfly bush will root so fast, and then throw it in the ground. So if it was legit broken on the top somewhere, though, that would be something I would ask for my money back on. Okay, let's see. Somebody has some perennial salvia that they've had for 3 years, and it's not blooming, or barely blooming. My question would be: Is it enough? Is it in enough sun? Because they're pretty daggone sun-loving plants. I mean, they love as much sun as possible. Are they getting enough water? I don't know if fertilizer is going to make that big of a difference. Is the ground covered around them, so that they're, the roots aren't overheated from the sun? Some of those questions. If you've done what you can do and it's just not putting on the show that you wanted to put it on, I'd probably grab another one. Again, you can probably find a very good perennial salvia that's not a patented one that will bloom most of the summer. I have annual salvias and perennial salvias and all kinds of salvias. I don't think I have a patented salvia in this landscape. I'm probably wrong about that. As many salvia that I have, but pretty much all of them were inexpensive ones that I got in 4-inch pots. And so if those aren't making you happy, go get some other ones and don't break the bank doing it, because most of them are pretty good performers. Somebody asked I get questions about this weeping redbud back here, and how am I supporting that sweet potato vine? People think it's a sweet potato vine back here. That's a weeping redbud. It's called Golden Falls. It's one of Denny Werner's introductions from North Carolina State University. I've done a couple videos at Denny's house. His name was brought up, and Kim Shearer at the Morton Arboretum, she actually went to NC State, and he was influential in her becoming a plant breeder as well. But that's one of Denny's introduction. That thing has leafcutter bees taking little pieces out of the leaves and doing their thing. They come and cut a little half circles out of the leaves and build their nest out of them. I love them. It's one of those things. I think a lot of people would look at those leaves on that plant. Let me go grab one. Let's see. Without damaging the tree. But these leafcutter bees, let me get my face out of that, will come and cut holes in them and use the material. Holly wants to go in the house. Let me do that real quick. Go on, girl. All right. She had enough of the humidity. But these leafcutter bees will come around and cut the leaves and use them for their own benefit. Great. My garden is part of the ecosystem. I actually look at it as something that's entertaining to me, and less of, they're not hurting the tree with any no long-term problem. And so if they can get benefit from it, thank you. Good. I'm glad. Somebody asked about oak saplings. I always get questions about how to remove oak saplings. I got a white oak back here that dominates above this garden, and I pull them. That's about all you can do. Raleigh is the city of oaks, and so my neighborhood is 80-year-old giant oaks everywhere, and so there's oak saplings coming up all over the place. The squirrels are burying the acorns constantly, and so I just have to pull them. There's nothing you can do. There's no solution to a question like that, unfortunately. I'm going to have more. Last year was a heavy acorn year. I don't know if this will be or not. Doesn't really matter. They're out here. They're going to come up every year. But as I see them, I pull them. And no great answer to that one. Somebody had some leaves burned on a maple back in April. I don't know if this was from a late frost or freeze, or they drove it down the road without a cover on it, which I've seen many people do. Whatever it was that burned the leaves, they wanted to know if they should do any additional thing to it this year. No, I mean, as long as the plant seems reasonably healthy, let it go to sleep this fall and it'll wake up next spring. It should be fine. Somebody asked me how to overwinter African basil. Just for those, basil's one of those things, most basils can be done from seed. African basil is an interspecies, is a hybrid, and the seed is sterile. And so they can only be done from plants or from cuttings, or, you know, from cuttings. And so that's the answer. You can go out and take cuttings off of yours and get them rooted, and then have them in the house through the winter in a very bright window. Put them out on days when it's warm. That's one thing I'll tell anyone trying to grow herbs in the house through the winter. If it's warm outside, you know, which you're going to get warm days in the wintertime, have them outside. They'd rather be out there in the sun than sitting on your windowsill. But that's how you have to carry over African basil, is from a plant. I've been lucky for the last 3 or 4 years I've been able to find it, and so I have not rooted mine. I've just been able to find it in a little 4-inch pot, and I only had to buy one because the thing gets this big in a single season. So I've been rebuying it. But if I thought I couldn't, I just root a couple pieces. That basil will root super easy. You can find my propagation videos on to root them. Is it too late to plant fennel? No, absolutely not. Fennel's tough as it can be, and I've got fennel in full flower back here. Pollinators going absolutely crazy on it. I'm waiting for swallowtail caterpillars to start eating it to the ground. I hope they come and ravage it soon. But I just haven't seen that many. There are definitely less butterflies this season so far. I'm hoping it's just a late start. I have seen monarchs. I have seen eastern swallowtails. I've seen a few, but I haven't seen as many as I would like to see. This is mostly still bees and wasp and lots of hummingbirds. Lots of different types of pollinators out here, moths and so on and so forth. A lot of things people don't think of as pollinators. Moths are big time pollinators. Ants are pollinators. But I haven't seen many yet. But I'm hoping they're going to destroy that fennel soon, because I enjoy, again, garden's part of the ecosystem. Somebody pulled out some plants out of a container that had been fading, and they found roly-polies or pillbugs in the soil toward the bottom, and wanted to know if they were causing them a problem. No, pillbugs, or as we call them, roly-polies, they only eat decaying, dying plant material. So something had to have been wrong with your plant in order for them to have been there. Don't start killing roly-polies and pillbugs. They're on the planet to break down rotten, decayed material. We'd be this deep in stuff if we killed everything that took care of those kinds of problems for us. We'd be this deep in rotten leaves and sticks and twigs and everything if we didn't have these. Some of these insects are here just to break down those types of things. They're there as a result, probably that it was overwatered. Almost certainly they're an indicator that you were probably overwatering or keeping the containers too wet. That's probably it. You may want to try to elevate your containers. If you have a bottom hole on your container that's sitting flat on the ground, sometimes that can hold moisture in the bottom of the pot a little more than you want it to. So you can put a couple little, raise your container up a little bit, and maybe that'll weep a little more of the water out of the bottom of them. But they're a good thing, but they're, again, if you have a crazy amount of them, then the space is probably too wet. Let's see. Somebody's got a 40-year-old magnolia and the roots are up on the surface, wanted to know what to do about it. Really not anything you can do about it. Magnolias they're very good at defending the space that they're in. It's hard to grow things under them. They tend to be just bare soil, underneath them typically, or where the leaves drop. You can mulch them, but don't mulch so thick that you're, causing problems. But that's one of those things you have to live with on a 40-year-old magnolia, is you're going to have surface roots, and they are greedy things that tend to dominate the drip zone that they occupy. Last question for this week. I think this is about 20. This is another one of those HOA questions. They have some hosta, and they've underplanted it with some mondo grass and some ajuga. The HOA says it's too thin, or they can still see the soil, or whatever, because they had way too much time on their hands to think about other people's stuff, and came over and made some complaint about it. Wanted to know what else they could plant in there just to thicken it up. The whole world's open to you to plant, for shade underplanting of oaks. Just make sure you're using a little bit of compost and keeping the ground covered, improving the soil. But they had mentioned that they like epimediums. Epimediums are great to use. Brunera or Brunera. A lot of people pronounce that two different ways. Ferns, for sure. Rhodia, cast iron plants. There's actually a lot of shade ground cover like plants that can fill that space in pretty quickly. And make it look fuller and more complete. And again, the more varieties you're using, typically the less overall problems you have. It's just strange to me that somebody who's actively trying to improve a space, that would be the person who would be complained about. I mean, I can see somebody with 2-foot weeds, growing on their front foundation or something, something like that. That would be, the target of an HOA. But or parking their car on the front lawn, or putting a clothesline in the front yard, or chain link fence, or 1,000 other things probably we could think of that we probably wouldn't want our neighbor doing. But somebody who's actively trying to improve their garden, leave them alone. Thanks for watching, guys.